All right, welcome back to ABA exam review and the continuation of our RBT practice exam series, where we're going through another set of questions together and breaking them down. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Please like and subscribe. Check out btexamreview.com for all of our study materials, including our combo pack. When you pass your exam, let us know so we can include you in the Sunday shout out. Work hard, study hard. Let's get going. Cheryl brings over a bag of toys and books that she picked up at Goodwill over the weekend. She takes out two of the items at a time, presents them to her daughter, and asks, "Which one do you like?" Cheryl does this for all combinations of items. What type of preference assessment is this? So let's think about what is going on in the question. The question wants to know about the type of preference assessment we're looking at. We know Cheryl has a whole bag of toys and books, and from that bag, she's taking out two items at a time, presenting them to her daughter and asking her, "Which one do you like?" So let's just say we have item X, item Y, item Z, and item A. Cheryl is taking each item, XY, XZ, XA, ZA, so on and so forth, and presenting them in pairs of twos. So when we take items in a preference assessment and present them in pairs of twos, what do we call that? A single choice preference assessment. With a single choice, we would have one singular item at a time. What we have here is two items at a time, or a forced choice preference assessment. A forced choice preference assessment is also known as a paired choice preference assessment. A multiple stimulus preference assessment is typically going to be three or more items that you present in an array, and you're either going to replace or not replace items that are chosen or not chosen. And then a free operant preference assessment is child-led, meaning, or I should say client-led, meaning you're just observing the client in their natural environment and taking note of what they interact with and what they don't interact with. In this case, we've got two items at a time. We're presenting them to the daughter, asking what one do they like. We're doing it for all combinations of items. The type of preference assessment we're looking at here is a forced choice preference assessment. Tony's tantrums were effectively reduced through an extinction procedure. However, after several weeks without any tantrums, Tony suddenly engages in a tantrum during a family outing without warning. What likely occurred? So the question wants to know what happened, right? Because this is a pretty common scenario. We have a behavior, in this case, tantrums, that we target with extinction. So we no longer provide reinforcement for the tantrums. Extinction's effective, it reduces the tantrums, but after several weeks, even though the tantrums were extinguished, all of a sudden the tantrum comes back without warning. What is it called when we effectively use extinction to reduce a behavior, and then suddenly that behavior reappears? A, an extinction burst. An extinction burst occurs during extinction. So if we think about behavior like this, where we've got a chart and you've got your behavior, let's say extinction starts here. What we expect is the behavior to increase at first, hit a point, and then drop down. This is our extinction burst, that temporary increase before the decrease. In this case, we've already gone through the extinction burst. So what about B, generalization? The behavior hasn't generalized, right? The behavior was gone. We haven't had any tantrums, and all of a sudden they've come back following extinction. What about C, reinforcement? Now be careful. There's no indication that tantrums have been reinforced, right? Apparently they've been gone, right? If they have been gone, then they have not been reinforced. A simple explanation here is spontaneous recovery. With your exam, you always want to go with the simplest explanation. In this case, the simplest explanation is spontaneous recovery. Spontaneous recovery occurs following an extinction procedure that's effective, the sudden reappearance of a behavior. When behavior suddenly comes back and spontaneous recovery occurs, the best thing you can do is quickly re-implement the extinction procedure that worked previously. So what likely occurred? D, spontaneous recovery. A parent is teaching their child how to brush their teeth. The parent prompts all steps except the final one, which is placing the toothbrush back in the holder, which the child does independently. Once the child masters the step, the parent teaches the child to rinse their mouth after brushing, followed by brushing the teeth after prompting the prior steps. What type of chaining does this represent? So it's a long question, but it's a straightforward one. We know it's a chaining question. What type of chaining does this represent? With our chaining, we're typically looking at forward chaining, backwards chaining, and total task chaining. We know with forward chaining, we're going to teach that first step in the beginning. With backwards chaining, we're going to teach the last step in the beginning. With total task chaining, we're teaching all steps. So what step are we teaching here? The behavior is brushing teeth. The parent is prompting all steps except the final one, which the child must do independently. Once the child masters that step, the parent then goes to the last step and the step right before the last step. So the parent is clearly teaching that last step first. They're prompting all other steps and teaching the last step first. When we teach that last step first, what do we call that? A, forward chaining. Forward chaining, we're teaching the first step first. What we're doing here is backwards chaining. Total task chaining, we're teaching all steps. And the task analysis is how we break down the actual behavior to get the steps. Notice how we read every answer choice every time. That's what you need to do. Read every answer choice and explain why the correct answer is correct, but also why the wrong answer is wrong. A student frequently interrupts their teacher by asking questions without being called on during lectures. The teacher implements extinction and stops responding altogether to the student. Eventually, the student stops interrupting during lectures. What is the likely function of the student's behavior? So we have a function question. And what are we looking for when trying to determine the function of a behavior? We're looking for why that behavior is occurring. What is maintaining the behavior? In other words, what's the consequence of the behavior? Because behavior is happening for a reason. The behavior may be happening to gain attention. It may be happening to gain a tangible, maybe happening to escape. It may be happening for sensory and automatic reasons. In this case, we have a student interrupting their teacher by asking questions without being called on. What does the teacher do? Well, the teacher stops responding to the student altogether. So what has the teacher done? The teacher's removed the attention for asking the questions without being called on. Eventually, now, the student has stopped interrupting during lectures. So if the attention was removed for calling out or asking questions without permission, and the behavior decreases, extinction is effective. From that, what do we think the likely function of the behavior is? Well, very likely it's A, attention. It's not an automatic function because it's happening, it's socially mediated, right? Automatic is alone or without social mediation. It's not a tangible, the student isn't receiving anything. And we can determine because what are we withholding? We're withholding the attention from the asking questions during lectures without being called on, which has led to a decrease in the behavior. Emma rarely cleans up her toys after playtime, but today she picked up the toys by herself, so her mom gave her a high five. Now, Emma is getting high fives and is cleaning up her toys more often. High fives represent what? Straightforward consequence question here, right? We're looking at the high fives, and what are we looking at the high fives relative to? Well, we know Emma rarely cleans up her toys, but she picked up the toys by herself today, so her mom gave her a high five. So the behavior was picking up toys by herself. The consequence was the high five. As a result of the high five, Emma is now cleaning up her toys more often. So if we added something that increased behavior, what is that going to represent? Well, that's going to represent A, positive reinforcement. Remember, reinforcement increases. So when you get a consequence question, you have to ask yourself, how did the behavior change? If the behavior increased, it must be reinforcement. If the behavior decreased, it's either going to be punishment or extinction. Emma is cleaning up her toys more often. Emma's behavior increased. It must be reinforcement. Now, it's not going to be B, negative reinforcement, because the high fives were added to the environment. And then C and D, positive and negative punishment. Well, we know it's not punishment because Emma's behavior would have decreased. Instead, Emma's behavior is happening more often. The high fives represent positive reinforcement. Thanks so much for watching. Check out btexamreview.com for all of our study materials. Subscribe for all of our video updates. We also have BCBA material, so be sure to check that out if you plan to go for your BCBA or BCABA. When you pass, let us know so we can include you in the Sunday shout out. Work hard, study hard. See you soon.